There is a truth that I taught for decades in the heart of New York, at the Carnegie Hall and the Hippodrome, that few people, even those who consider themselves spiritual, ever truly dare to take seriously. It is an uncomfortable truth, it is a powerful truth, and for many it is a terrifying truth, because it places the total responsibility for one's life exactly where it belongs, within the individual consciousness. This truth flies directly in the face of everything the world believes about money, poverty, and luck. It is the foundational stone of scientific Christianity, and until you grasp it, you will remain a slave to the winds of circumstance. The average person believes that they are poor because of an objective reality. They point to a thin bank account, a lack of employment, or a crumbling economy and say, "This is the truth of my life." But I tell you, these things are not the truth. They are merely the out-picturing of a state of mind. They are shadows. The subconscious mind is a giant, impersonal creative engine. It has no sense of humor and no ability to argue with you. It simply takes whatever blueprints you give it and builds them into your physical experience. Most people are constantly handing the subconscious blueprints of not enough. Consider the story of a man I once knew. We shall call him Armando. Armando was 42 years old and had lived through a devastating business failure. He had lost his savings, his office, and most dangerously, his sense of divine identity. When I met him, he was the walking embodiment of a poverty consciousness. He spoke in hushed, defeated tones. He wore a suit that was once fine, but was now wrinkled and dusty, and he made no effort to brush it. He walked as if the weight of the world was resting on his neck. Armando believed his problem was a lack of capital. He thought if someone would just lend him $10,000, his life would be fixed. But I knew that if you gave Armando $10,000 that afternoon, he would have lost it by the following month. Why? Because he was carrying a $10,000 deficit in his soul. He was radiating a frequency of failure, and as a result, doors were slammed in his face before he even spoke a word. Potential partners sensed his desperation and pulled away. Opportunity cannot find a man who is hiding in the dark cellar of self-pity. Armando's problem was not his bank balance. It was the appearance he was projecting to the universe. He was confirming his poverty every second of the day through his posture, his speech, and his internal dialogue. He had forgotten that he was an expression of the living God. I often use the analogy of the prince to illustrate this law. Suppose a prince, the heir to a vast and wealthy kingdom, suddenly finds himself lost in a foreign land without a penny in his pocket. He is hungry and his clothes are dusty from travel. Does he suddenly become a beggar? No, he remains a prince. His dignity is not in his wallet, it is in his blood. He speaks like a prince, he carries himself like a prince, and he expects to be treated like a prince, because he maintains that prince consciousness. Someone will eventually recognize his nobility and offer him aid, or he will find his way back to his father's house. But if that prince begins to think of himself as a beggar, if he begins to whimper, to plead, and to believe that he is lowly, then he has truly lost his kingdom. Most people have allowed the dust of temporary financial difficulty to convince them that they are beggars. They have accepted the mirage of the desert as the final truth. Jesus, the greatest metaphysician who ever lived, warned us, "Judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment." So John 7:24. Righteous judgment is the ability to look at a pile of unpaid bills and say, "This is an appearance, but the truth of my life is infinite abundance." Accompanied by the mathematical precision of spirit, the law of mind is just as mathematical and impersonal as the law of gravity. Gravity does not care if you are a saint or a sinner. If you step off a ledge, you go down. In the same way, the law of consciousness does not care about your reasons for being poor. It does not care that your boss was unfair or that the economy is in a slump. It only cares about the mental equivalent you are holding. If you hold a mental equivalent of, "I am a child of God, and my Father is the source of all good," the law must, by its very nature, begin to manifest that good in your life. But you cannot hold that mental state while simultaneously presenting a shabby version of yourself to the world. You cannot attract a feast while you are mentally and physically rehearsing a famine. This is the foundational lesson. You will never have in your hand what you do not first have in your consciousness. You must begin to be wealthy in your mind, in your bearing, and in your quiet confidence before the first dollar of your new life appears. You must refuse to be defined by your circumstances. You must realize that your true identity is spiritual, and spirit knows no lack, no limitation, and no failure. The world sees Armando as a failure. God sees Armando as a divine spark of infinite potential. The question is, which one will Armando choose to see when he looks in the mirror? Now that we have cleared the ground and understood that your outer circumstances are but a mirror of your inner state, we must move from the theory of truth into the laboratory of the soul. It is one thing to know that the law of mind exists. It is quite another to know how to operate the machinery of that law to produce a demonstration. In scientific Christianity, we do not pray in the sense of begging a distant, moody deity for prayer. That is the prayer of a slave, and it rarely brings results. We practice what I call scientific prayer, or the treatment. A treatment is a specific mental process designed to clear away the fog of fear and limitation so that the sunlight of God's abundance can shine through. It is the process of changing your own mind until you are no longer a match for poverty, but a perfect match for prosperity. The great law is as precise as the laws of chemistry. To change your life, you must follow a specific sequence of mental moves. If you follow these 5 steps with sincerity and discipline, the results are mathematically certain. The first step is to turn your back completely on the problem. Do not look at the empty pantry. Do not look at the overdue notice. Turn your mental gaze toward the one presence. Recognition is the act of acknowledging that God, the infinite mind, the source of all life, is the only power and the only presence in the universe. You must realize that there is no power of lack to fight against. Lack is simply an absence of the realization of God, just as darkness has no power of its own, but vanishes the moment a light is turned on. Poverty has no power the moment you truly recognize God as your infinite supply. Once you have recognized the great power, you must claim your place within it. This is where most people falter. They think of God as out there, and themselves as down here. You must declare with conviction, I and the Father are one, not in an arrogant sense of the ego, but in the metaphysical sense that you are a spark of the divine flame. If God is infinite wealth, and you are an expression of God, then you are, in your very essence, wealthy. You are not asking for money, you are claiming your inheritance. You are unifying your small, fearful mind with the giant, creative mind of the universe. This is the heart of the treatment. Realization is not just thinking about money, it is feeling the security and peace that money represents. The subconscious mind does not respond to words, it responds to feelings. You must close your eyes and feel the atmosphere of abundance. Feel the relief of having every bill paid. Feel the joy of being able to give generously to others. Do not concern yourself with the how or the when. The how is the business of the law. Your business is to provide the mental equivalent, the vivid inner feeling of, it is done. In the New Testament, we see that Jesus often gave thanks before the miracle occurred. He thanked God for the bread before it was multiplied. Why? Because thanksgiving is the ultimate declaration of faith. It tells the subconscious mind that the manifestation is already a reality in the spiritual realm. When you give thanks for your prosperity while your pockets are still empty, you are performing a profound act of spiritual alchemy. You are signaling to the universe that you trust the law implicitly. The final step is perhaps the most difficult for the beginner. You must release the treatment. You must take your hands off the steering wheel. If you spend the rest of your day worrying about whether the prayer worked, you have just neutralized the entire process. Worry is a prayer for what you don't want. Releasing the treatment means you hand the order over to the divine department of supply, and you go about your day with the quiet confidence of someone who has just placed an order with a reliable firm. You do not call the post office every 10 minutes to ask if your package is coming. You know it is on its way. This is what I call the alchemy of appearance. It is the practice of maintaining a sense of order and dignity in your physical environment, regardless of your current balance. If your home is in a state of chaos, if there is dust in the corners, broken items unrepaired, and clutter everywhere, you are broadcasting a poverty consciousness to your own subconscious mind. Order is the first law of heaven. To clean your house, to mend your clothes, and to shine your shoes is a spiritual act. It is a way of saying to the universe, I am ready for the best. I am a person of worth, and I treat my surroundings with the respect that a prince would show his palace. I often instructed my students to perform a very specific exercise to reinforce their new identity. Every morning, stand before your mirror. Look yourself directly in the eyes. Do not look at the wrinkles or the gray hair. Look into the soul behind the eyes. Speak your treatment aloud when you do this. You are not just saying words. You are stamping a new image onto the sensitive plate of the subconscious. You are overwriting the old, shabby self-image of Armando the failure and replacing it with the image of Armando the divine expression.